What is up, everyone? My name is Doug Polk, and welcome back to Poker Hands. We're going to continue with the hot topic, which is William Kassouf in the World Series of Poker main event against one of my good friends, Jason Les. On that note, let's jump into the action.
There it is, big blind special.
You already looked?
Wow, I already looked, yeah, I always look. I like to gamble with the nuts, that's fine. There we go, no shame in folding. You fold and show, I'll show. Look, how's that? How's that, Jason?
Down to the blinds.
You fold and show, I'll show. Big end. Jason. I said if you fold and show, I will show. Because I got a big hand here. 150. I told you.
As usual.
Best hand.
Second best hand.
Remember last time you limped out a crap hand? I checked behind, remember? This time I got a much better hand. Oh, you had the spare 100 there. Yeah, it makes sense.
Our hand begins with Jason Les limping into the pot with ace-2 of diamonds. In the small blind, you have a variety of strategies that you can play. I don't want to go too deep into each of them because that would take a while, but you can decide to either limp, you can decide to just only raise, you can decide to do a little bit of both. There are tons of good strategies out of the small blind. So I wouldn't say that limping it with ace-2 suited is necessarily the right play, but it is a play that you can make, and you probably need to do a mix of both things. Anyway, he limps in, and now Kassouf decides to raise it up with queen 10, and if you've been paying attention to your poker hands like we had before, I do not like this play for the same reasons I didn't like it against Greg Merson. When you raise with queen 10, the big blind facing a limp, what happens to you, what happens to you if you get limp re-raised? What happens if Les makes it 500,000 here? Well, now you're going to have a very difficult spot with a hand that can easily be dominated by a hand like aces, kings, queens, jacks, ace, king, ace, queen. I guess, of course, not dominated by ace, king, but you know what I mean. The point is, it's not a good situation, and it also opens the door for Jason to maybe limp re-raise with a hand like ace-2 suited or some kind of ace hand or Broadway hand or whatever. So the point is, when you're in the big blind, you face limps, don't raise up with hands that are going to be confused against re-raises. You want to have a more polarized strategy with hands that if you do get limp re-raised, you're okay letting it go. Anyway, so Kassouf raises facing the limp, Les calls, and let's see the flop.
Deuce 4, queen, bottom pair for Les, top pair for Kassouf.
Try looking board, isn't it? Unless you've got spades. Let me have a look. I don't want to make a mistake. Nope, still got it. Still there.
I wonder if there's any other part of Kassouf's life where he does this, you know, like at the supermarket. Does he ever try to bluff a cashier?
235.
With 4 times the stack as Les.
Les having bad memories of earlier hands against Kassouf.
Not making a move. You show me your best card, I'll show you my best card.
When they're facing your bet, you're not allowed to talk.
I haven't said anything about that.
When you bet and he's thinking, you're not allowed to talk.
So if I hadn't bet, I'm allowed to talk then?
If he's not facing the bet, sure, talk away.
Okay, fair enough.
But when you bet and they're facing the bet, you're not allowed to talk.
I can't say anything?
Nope.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that's the rule.
I didn't know that was a rule.
Will has already served 1 penalty at this main event.
So I can give him a 5-minute speech and then think about it.
The flop comes queen 4 deuce, giving Jason bottom pair top kicker and the backdoor and a flush draw. It also gives Kassouf top pair middle kicker, so both players have definitely gotten a piece of the flop. Jason likes to check here, which is the right play. If you limp in and decide to call a raise in the small blind, you want to be checking all of your hands here to protect your range. If he bets with some hands and checks with others, then when he checks, it means something and you want to protect yourself from giving away those kinds of tells when you're out of position. However, even if you were going to have some bets, a hand like this would be a very good candidate for check calling. You have some showdown value, you can play some turns on some rivers, and if you do bet, you're likely only getting your opponent off of hands that you would beat anyway. So I like the check here from Jason. Kassouf now decides to bet 235,000 into the pot. I like the size. I think it's good in a board like this. A lot of hands are going to have a tough decision, and I like betting with this hand as well. You know, when Jason check calls this flop, he's going to have a lot of hands like ace high, a deuce, a 4, and maybe a few queens, but some of the better queens are going to be raising pre-flop or might limp re-raise him as well if he has a hand like ace queen. So really, he's only going to be behind a few hands like maybe queen jack or king queen if those hands did not elect to raise to begin with. So I like the bet, and he's definitely going to get a lot of value from Jason's check call range. Jason calls, and let's see the turn. But before we go there, I want to make a quick note in this hand. Kassouf is going to do a lot of chatting, and I know there's going to be a lot of questions. Doug, why don't you talk about what he's saying? You know, I'm not totally sure what his chat game's all about. I don't know if it's balanced. I don't know if certain things mean whatever. But I'm not going to take my time studying Kassouf in a bunch of spots to see like what his chat means. It seems like he's a bit of a chatterbox and he likes to say a lot of stuff. So we're going to keep it on the actual poker of the hand, and you can make your own judgment on what you think about what he's saying.
Actually, I don't like Will's talk when the other person must act. You've got to give them some room.
Norman Chad being the expert on giving people some space, you can ask either of his ex-wives.
Ace is up for less now and a commanding advantage.
That was lucky, wasn't it? Let me get there. I think I was winning anyway.
Les checks the best hand.
Check to induce. Oh, you want me to bet? You want me to check? I have to ask you now, because once I make the bet, I'm not allowed to say anything, apparently. So I thought I'd ask the question. If you don't say anything, I might have to bet it. I think I'm winning now.
Jason Les just wants the ringing in his ears to stop.
Okay, just in case it's gone.
Oh, checks back.
The turn brings an offsuit ace, and both players elect to check. I like this decision from both of them. Jason could maybe argue for a turn lead, being that he does have a lot of hands that contain an ace in his range when he elects to call on the flop. He can either go for a small sized lead with a bunch of hands, or maybe even a big lead with a few bluffs and some hands like ace-2. But check is also a very reasonable play, keeping his range quite strong with good holdings. I think Kassouf, despite all of the banter, has a pretty clear check back here on the turn. If he bets the turn, he's really not able to bet for value in the river. And also, if he does bet the turn, he's going to make a hand like a 2 or a 4 fold. And what is he really beating with Queen 10? He might be beating a hand like Queen 8 suited, but there's a lot less of those hands than hands like Ace X that could call a pre-flop raise, call flop, and then hit top pair on the turn. So I like both players' play here, and let's see the river.
River card. Oh, and Les fills up. Deuce is full for him.
And now is the time for Jason Les to bet the best hand.
Check to induce.
Well, I'll improve on the river. It's not a bad card. It's not a good card, it's not a bad card. The deuce definitely didn't help you. I think you're cool with the deuce.
The river is an offsuit 2, giving Jason Les a full house. Now, Jason has two options that are both good. In general, when you're out of position, you want to make sure to put some very strong hands into your check range in order to check raise. So using that as my main factor, I like the check. But there are some things to think about here that might make this a bet. Our opponent's not really going to have a hand like an ace. I think that hand's unlikely to be betting the flop and then checking the turn. If he did bet the flop, I think he's going to continue with some aggression here on the turn. So, knowing those things, our opponent is really either going to have a queen, maybe a 4, or some kind of air. Now, the problem with checking against that range of hands is there's not many hands that want to bet there. If your opponent does have a queen, they might check because they're scared you have an ace and you're trapping, or they might get check raised, or there aren't really worse hands they can get to call. So maybe if he has a queen, like Kassouf has in this hand, you're going to miss out on value by checking. That said, putting some boats in your check range so if they do decide to bet a hand like a queen can be good. That way you can mix in some bluffs like a 4. If you think a 4 isn't good, you could turn to a bluff and check raise, but you wouldn't want to bet a 4 to begin with. So I like the check. I think maybe given what Kassouf's range looks like, a bet could be better, but both plays are definitely reasonable. So Jason checks, and it's over to Kassouf.
I think you're cool with the deuce. I think if you had a queen, you just got saved by the river, right? I'm hoping you got 4-5 suited. I'll be happy to see 4-5 of clubs.
Les may have left some chips on the table.
Wow. Nice catch, obviously.
Kassouf starts to do the whole banter thing again, but he actually does have an interesting situation. If I'm Kassouf and my opponent decides to check the river, I'm not really putting them on an ace. Because a hand like an ace that check called flop, check turn, is generally going to bet river trying to get value from a hand like a queen. So it doesn't really look like Jason has a queen or an ace here on the river. It looks like he has a queen or a 4. He even says, I'd really like to see 5-4 of clubs. For those reasons, I don't mind seeing a bet here. Now, a bet doesn't seem very efficient to me. You know, you might get a 4 to fold and a queen to call, which kind of sucks. So I think I like using a very small size if you do decide to bet. You want to put a 4 in a tough spot and not know whether it should call or fold. That said, if Jason plays like we talked before and he raises a 4 as a bluff sometimes, or folds it, calls a queen, and then check raises full houses, then betting is not going to be very good. So in Kassouf's shoes on the river, you want to decide what you think your opponent is doing and base your strategy around that. Checking is definitely reasonable here, but the only problem with that is you do give a lot of hands some free showdowns, and you really prevent yourself from being able to bluff. If Kassouf does bet here, he's basically saying he has a 2 if he's not willing to bet a queen in the turn, and if he's going to bet a queen in the river, and if he's not going to bet an ace on the turn. So, I think in this spot, if he's going to bet an ace on the turn. We're going to get there. So, all of those things considered, I think I do like a check. I wouldn't mind occasionally betting a queen as well to try and put a 4 in a tough spot and force maybe a few lighter hands to have to call you. And I would also keep in mind that when Kassouf says, oh, a 2 doesn't hit you here, he's generally correct, because what hand with a 2 in it would call pre-flop and then call a raise? It can only really be a few 2s, ace 2 suited, king 2 suited, maybe a hand like queen 2 suited. But queen 2 suited is probably going to raise the flop, and king 2 suited is going to be pretty inclined to bet the river. Maybe go for the check raise, that could be fine too, but generally speaking, a bit more inclined to bet the river. With ace 2, your opponent's even less likely to have anything. So, all in all, I don't mind the check. I wouldn't mind seeing him bet occasionally. And I guess this is the kind of spot where I think a lot of people that watch the Poker Hands videos, they say like, oh, clear bet or clear check or whatever. But the thing is, if you always take a certain action with a certain hand, it becomes very easy to play against. If Kassouf's always going to bet a queen here on the river, it's very easy for Jason to want to check his boats and know he can check raise and that he's going to put that hand in a tough spot and then also work in some bluffs. If Kassouf never bets a hand like queen 10 here, then yeah, Jason's check with ace 2 is not going to be very good. But then when Jason has a hand like a 4 or maybe even king high, he's going to get the show down against Kassouf, who's not going to be able to bluff because he doesn't have these other hands that he can value bet. So part of having a good balanced strategy is picking some of these hands to take both actions with and understand the opponent that you're playing against. Thank you for joining me here today on Poker Hands, and I hope you like this hand. If there was only some way I could know when the new videos come out, how would I know? God, it's like they need a subscribe button or something. That would be awesome. I would totally click that. A good example of working in some bluffs into your value range so that your opponent's going to have a difficult time playing against you. And it also really shows that in tournaments, you can apply pressure with these draws successfully. You know, I think that there's, for some reason, a lot of players that feel like they shouldn't